How recent changes in technology will change medicine. This is one of a series of videos that can be found on the website aboutcancer.com. This is from a series of lectures I've given on technology and medicine. And by the summer of 2016, it's clear to me that the disruptive innovation of technology will change medicine completely. And that raises the question, will doctors become obsolete in the near future? Well, number one, they can use technology and the internet to better educate themselves and remain current. They can use apps and more sophisticated EMRs, or electronic medical record system, to try to run a more efficient practice. Number three, they can use websites and other social media outlets to better communicate with their patients. And number four, they may need to use telemedicine or telehealth to try to reach patients more effectively and efficiently. But it seems to me, even if the doctor is an early adopter and a techie, most physicians will be replaced by increasingly sophisticated software and AI programs, and most patients will turn to digital assistants and robotics for the majority of their care in the not-too-distant future, particularly if the digital assistants are linked into wearable software or computers that are monitoring their health. And some of the recent headlines that suggest this is happening quickly and rapidly. The headline that Watson outsmarted the doctors on diagnosing a patient with a rare form of leukemia, that the computer was able to take the patient's genetic data and compare it with information from 20 million oncologic studies and come up with the right diagnosis. That even Google's search algorithm and Bing will both help self-diagnose patients more and more. It's worth noting that smartphones have been around only 10 years or so and have had a huge impact on society and high acceptance. And this led to the rise of the virtual assistant, first Siri and then OK Google and then Kartura, and Amazon Echo's Alexas become increasingly popular, and this has led to Google announcing Google Home. It seems highly probable that the public will become increasingly comfortable and then dependent on digital virtual assistants. So what will become the role of doctors over the next 20 years? Well, three advances in science and technology that are worth knowing about that many doctors may not be familiar with. Number one, the exponential growth in information, and at the same time, information technology, which is growing exponentially and can keep up with this, but not the human mind. Number two, complexity theory, or a new form of math that's necessary to really understand biology. And number three, some recent breakthroughs in AI just in the last 2 or 3 years, especially machine learning or deep learning, that are having a radical impact. Alvin Toffler wrote the book Future Shock in 1970 to basically say things are changing too quickly for people to make sense of. Chaos theory was popularized in 1987 and gave the public an idea of complex systems. In a more recent publication, The Watchman's Rattle, the author points out that as society gets overwhelmed by complexity, they can either evolve, adapt, or go extinct. And I think doctors are going to have to do one of these three. So what does IBM Watson have to say? According to them, there are 2.5 quintillion bytes of data produced every day. And according to Watson Health's website, the average person will generate more than 1 million gigabytes of health-related data. And again, only a supercomputer can keep up with this. Watson can read 40 million documents in 15 seconds. Most people are familiar with Moore's Law. Gordon Moore of Intel in 1965 had predicted that the doubling of transistors in microchips would double every 24 months. In the 50 years since there, the data shows the transistor count has been doubling about every 2 years. Ray Kurzweil extended this further with his law of accelerating returns. For over a century, there's been an exponential growth in the ability to process information. And the information technology is growing so fast, it's about to exceed the smartest human being, and in short order, all of human beings. This leads to the second point worth understanding, complexity theory. This is a simple cartoon of just one disease, mantle cell lymphoma, showing some of the pathways as the cells evolve to a malignant state. And as the cartoon shows, there are multiple white boxes where there are new drugs being developed to interfere with these pathways. The problem is, even if the doctor could memorize this one image, it would be changing dynamically with every drug and constantly changing and shifting. So complexity has proven to be a fundamental feature to our world in biology. And complexity theory emphasizes these interactions and the feedback loops and the dynamic nature. And this is like Isaac Newton. Almost 350 years ago, he found he needed to invent a new form of mathematics, calculus, in order to solve his problems in mathematical physics. And calculus, in essence, the mathematical study of change. We now need to use complexity theory to solve modern problems. And if doctors aren't aware of complexity theory, there are multiple institutes now and websites that will teach complexity theory or discuss it. And some of these are shown. The third component, along with the exponential growth of information and the field of complexity theory, are the advances in AI that are transforming the world. For a quick overview, this recent TED site that has an AI playlist is a nice introduction to the field if you're not up to date. But in essence, they're saying advances in artificial intelligence, which appear to have stalled in the 1980s, have really taken off. We're getting very close to the point of being outsmarted by computers. The economic impact is dramatic. If the Industrial Revolution eliminated most of the blue-collar jobs because of better productivity, the machine learning revolution will eliminate most of the white-collar jobs. And there's plenty of money in Silicon Valley for startups to fund the growing changes in AI. This from a recent article in the New York Times. The amount of money pouring into artificial intelligence is taking off. At the same time, the money for startups on social media is declining. So there'll be plenty of money to promote these programs. And so to look at one type of AI program, one of many, we'll look at deep learning, or our Google site, Google DeepMind. There was a headline recently where the Google DeepMind beat the world's expert in Go, which is an ancient Chinese game that's apparently very difficult. The computer was fed 100,000 human matches and then was told to play itself for 30 million games and use reinforcement learning to keep beating earlier versions of itself, and eventually came out and beat the best human at the game Go, which apparently is very intuitive. Another thing, using the same software, the AI system was able to recreate the complex quantum experiment to create a Bose-Einstein condensate. It did this in 1 hour. This was the same experiment that won the Nobel Prize for Physics in 2001, and it did this from scratch. At the same time, other robotic studies are now showing self-awareness or consciousness, and this is all coming much more quickly than had been anticipated. And the impact on medicine can be nicely summarized just watching this one recent TED Talk by Jeremy Howard. He took the deep learning software and went to Harvard and had it help the Harvard radiologists read CAT scans better to diagnose cancer. Then he took the software to Stanford and had it help Stanford pathologists learn how to read cancer slides better. And then he kicked out the doctors and did the same thing with no doctors, just the deep learning software, and it was able to diagnose cancer on the pathology. So he got the idea of starting another startup. If you go to their website, Analytic applies the state-of-art and deep learning technology to medicine. And it says for patients, the technology will automatically screen for hundreds of specific diseases. And for the radiologists who are willing to use their software, it would dramatically reduce image read time and improve detecting comorbidities and come up with other diagnoses. And for the hospital administrators, it tells them if you use radiologists who are handpicked based on their accuracy and speed using deep learning tools. So using the software, mind you, not learning how to read radiology images in medical school. But the target is half the cost, twice the accuracy, twice the speed of legacy approaches. It's likely hospital administrators and insurance providers will be seduced by this software to basically eliminate doctors. Now, a doctor can try to learn this software, deep learning. Audacity has a site. There are multiple other sites about deep learning computers and software, the language, but it will quickly be way beyond the average physician. There are fun sites that discuss how the deep learning is creating images and music, and you can at least watch these. So how is the doctor to survive? Well, in the short term, using medical apps, trying to be more efficient. I've joked that I can run an oncology practice with just 4 apps. Number 1, the EPSS U.S. Preventative Task Force app updates constantly the guidance on screening and prevention. The NCCN app, National Comprehensive Cancer Network, is constantly updated on treatment testing and follow-up for cancer. Hippocrates, one of the medication apps, will keep the doctor up to date on drugs and their use. And then finally, a site like UpToDate will give the doctor a quick review of major topics and a nice overview that he wouldn't have the time to keep up with on his own. And it's likely there will be more sites like this. This was on the internet recently, an interactive decision support tool. So you can plug in the patient's demographics, and they'll have an expert panel that will recommend certain drugs. But what will happen soon? Patients and researchers will continue to amass massive quantities of health data that only supercomputers will be able to make sense of in a timely manner. Number 2, whoever controls and knows how to mine big data will have the power to control healthcare in the future, which is, after all, just information technology. Number 3, patients will be more and more comfortable accessing the data from a virtual assistant without the cost and delay involved with seeing a physician. And the virtual assistant will have all their medical data and personal information. And of course, we'll never forget if they're allergic to penicillin. And then finally, doctors of the future will need to reinvent themselves if they expect to remain a relevant part of the future healthcare delivery system. So doctors have to anticipate and adapt to dramatic changes, or the patients will simply go right past the doctor and manage their care without them. As in Eric Topol's book, The Patient Will See You Now, on the democratization of medicine and healthcare. Now, doctors don't have a particularly good reputation for intellectual flexibility, and perhaps they should all read a simple book like Who Moved My Cheese and try to train themselves to be much more flexible. So, the last doctor, will there be any role for physicians by the mid-century? Will there be a shortage of doctors as anticipated in the future, or is there really going to be a glut of doctors? Well, you would say we'll always need doctors. Like food, it's important. Well, what happened to the farmers? Well, what did happen to the farmers? Well, in 1790s, farmers made up 90% of the workforce, and now they're 2%. And we have more than enough food, as the obesity epidemic demonstrates. And other scientific breakthroughs I haven't even mentioned. Take CRISPR. CRISPR was the science breakthrough of the year for 2015, where you can do targeted genome editing and basically redo the human genome in animals and bacteria. This was 2015. By mid-2016, as I dictate this, on the website there are multiple sites already, companies and startups that will sell you CRISPR genomic editing software and material. And at some point, patients will be able to go into their bathtub and redesign the genetics of their children to make them smarter and prettier. And they won't need doctors for that. And they'll eliminate diseases with genetic engineering. So finally, back to Ray Kurzweil, the singularity is near. At some point in the near future, there'll be a merger of machine and biology and organic creatures. There'll be no distinction between human and machine, or between physical and virtual. And he estimates this will happen by 2045. Dilbert is always ahead of the pitch here, as he says, my long-term plan is to do brain imaging, map my mind, update that, upload that into the cloud to live forever in software emulation. He said, assuming that hasn't already happened. So doctors need to look at this as disruptive innovation and have to be well aware of the impact technology will have on medicine and be vigilant about how the role of medicine will be rapidly changing and try to prepare themselves. Good luck.